Okay, so you've read Nopalitos by Viramontes. Here's a copy of it on the screen. I'm going to walk you through some of what I think are the most important elements, especially those related to where fiction comes from in her life and how it relates to food and nourishment. So I've highlighted a few sections here. I'm going to stop at many of them and just give you a little overview. So here she talks about fiction being her jugular. That's because the jugular vein is an essential vein in your body. It's very important to her. And she's going to write about all the things that perhaps were miserable in her life. She's going to make some goodness out of them by writing about them. So right from the get-go, we know that stories are important because writing's important, and she's going to turn what was bad into good. One of her fond memories is these late night kitchen meetings. That's where she heard stories and stories and stories in her family. And she comes to the realization that that's what fiction's made of. It's made of stories. She starts reflecting on her mom and how tired her mom must have been, particularly because she kept going and going and going. And her love of her stories and the love of her mom has really influenced her in many ways, and a lot of that influence comes out in sort of the unconscious storytelling. I would make the case. For example, the first story that she wrote, right here, it's called Requiem for the Poor. It opens with this scene with her mom making breakfast. Down here, she discusses the fact that moms have little time. They're expected to do lots of things for the family, and that can make it difficult to find the time to write and to become a writer if you're a woman. So it's one of the hurdles that she has to overcome. Let's see. All right. But here she explains how moms are particularly inventive. So in her mom's case, she would have to feed 11 people. And time again, Helena saw her cut 4 pork chops, etc., and it turned into this huge feast for a lot of people. So her mom was able to take something small and turn it into something big, which is also what Viramontes is doing with her writing. Here, she starts making a connection between her mom's cooking and her own storytelling, because nopals are Nopalitos is a culturally significant dish made of a kind of cactus called a nopal. Anyway, her mom could invent these huge feasts, and Viramontes feels like she has inherited her capacity for invention, even if it's not necessarily cooking. I'm going to skip down a bit. These are some of the stories that make up her life a bit. And she gives us a big warning here that if you stifle women's imagination, we will pay a severe price, that we need to hear from women. And that's true. The bulk of stories over the years have been published by white men, and we've got to hear more voices. Down here, she starts talking about reinventing traditions, because if she's going to be a writer, she's got to break stereotypes. She's got to get out of societal expectations for what women should do. And to do so, one of the things she's going to do is she's going to need to claim some time. And other people in her family and other people in her life are going to have to respect the demands that being a writer will cost. Now here is the big transition. Because Nopalitos is a culturally significant dish, and she's about to serve some Nopalitos to you, you can assume that all of this stuff down here, she's sort of feeding you with stories that make up who she is as a writer and where she came from. So these are the stories that help us understand where she's come from. Towards the end of the piece, she starts talking about starvation and hunger, and it's complicated because when she sees all that goes around her, things that are not so good, she wonders about the importance of fiction. She wonders about the value of fiction when there's a starving child. But she believes it's important to continue to write. She believes that storytelling is nourishing and is nourishment. And if they starve, then she will starve. If they die, then she will die. But we can change things. So we need to tell stories. We need to see stories as nourishment. We need to see the relationships between people as nourishment. and that's where she's coming from. So one of the things I want you to do is to think about where in Under the Feet of Jesus there are food moments where we see bonding and relationships and nourishment. Here's one from page 19. You'll probably remember it. It's when Estrella was entertaining her young siblings who were starving with an empty bin of oatmeal. She's playing it like a drum. Well, down here on page 20, her mom, I can't find it. Oh, here we go. Her mom describes, or she's imagining, or she's thinking that Estrella was feeding the children. She's feeding them with noise, not oatmeal, but there's this recognition of that, the importance of that relationship. And here's another one from part 3, late in part 3, that most of us might not remember. At the bottom of the page here, you'll see that Petra is starting to make some tortillas. She starts in the middle, she rolls north to south, flips the dough, sprinkles the flour, turns to move the tortilla already baking, rolled from east to west. So here we've got this food preparation moment where Petra's being particularly deliberate about how she's making it. For me, it's important that they go north, south, east, west, because the family's a family of migrant workers, and they do a lot of north, south, east, west. But if you stay with this paragraph and just treat it like a paragraph about the making of the food, you'll see some interesting things. She can do all this in the dark. She can do it ill. She can do it healthy. She can do it near some trees. She can do it by a road. She can do it on a door made into a table. She can do it while birds fly past her with twigs. She can do it any time of day. Why? Because tortillas filled her children's stomachs and made their stomachs hungry for more. So this feeding is about the relationship with her kids and about nourishing them. So consider going back to some other food moments in Under the Feet of Jesus, and you might be surprised at what you missed the first time around. Next time, we're going to do a little bit of writing. You're going to write from Estrella's perspective, or Petra's perspective, or Viramontes' perspective, and just sort of write back and forth between the two parties. I'll explain more next time. Look forward to seeing you then.